I know, right? We have socks for this purpose.
Oh, I should have done that.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, we are live. So thank you everyone for joining. We have solicited some questions from LinkedIn, from Instagram, from Twitter, and we also have some questions come in live that we're going to get to. But before we get into some of the fun questions, I figured we do intros. Skyler, you want to kick it off?
Sure. One of the founders, Skyler. Title is COO. That doesn't mean too much, but I tend to think of my job as who we are and how we do things. So a lot of process related things, a lot of the systems that we put in place for growth, and the software systems that help support that, how we think about flight tests and operations, as well as the marketing and brand and content, have some opinions on there as well.
Glenn Case, CTO, handle a lot of the R&D operations here at Hermeus, kind of set the direction of the technologies we choose and what paths we go down to solve the product problems that we have. So, Mike?
Yeah, Mike Smayda, also one of the founders, Chief Product Officer. So I think main role is kind of figuring out what we need to build between where we are now and long-term flying people across the Atlantic in 90 minutes at 5 times the speed of sound, figuring out how to work with customers, and a lot of stuff to unpack there.
Awesome. We are missing an obvious part of the founder team.
Oh, yeah.
AJ Piplica.
Using
his
up.
wife just had a baby, so happy birthday to new Piplica baby.
Yeah.
An active user of the parental leave system that we have.
Yes.
That's great.
I'm Natalie. Been on the podcast before, but director of people. Really oversee recruiting, HR, employee programs, really everything that falls under making Hermeus a great place to work. So, all right, let's get this kicked off.
Oh, yeah.
I love this question because I feel like it happens all the time. When your friend, family ask you what you do, what's your 5-second elevator pitch?
Oh,
I make airplanes.
Build the
Okay.
world's fastest airplane.
You go that hard?
So this is actually a problem, right? When somebody asks you about what you do, I don't straight up say, yeah, I make hypersonic jets.
Yeah. No.
Right? Because it just seems too far out there.
Uh-huh.
And so just peel it back. So it's usually, oh, what do you do? I make airplanes. Okay, well, what kind of airplanes do you make? Well, ones that go faster than the speed of sound. Well, like how fast? Mach 5. And then they start to and then they start screwing their face up and looking at you like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, it's like, especially with people I don't know, I always just start with, I'm an engineer, and usually people's eyes glaze over, and then I'm like, okay, we'll leave it at that. But it's like, if someone's interested, they're like, what kind? I'm like, oh, I got him now.
Yeah, the 5-second answer, you got to get it out in the first 2 seconds, leave some time for follow-up questions.
Right. And then it's like, oh, really fast airplanes.
Yeah. I think
What
that's
do you
the same. I think the same thing. I say I work for an airplane company.
Mm-hmm.
And then if people ask me, like, what do you do? Then I get into that.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I do is so nebulous and gray area for so many. No one really knows what people operations is. So unless, again, someone's really interested, then I'll get into it. But otherwise, I'm like, HR.
Yeah.
That's the easiest one.
Yeah.
That's usually the easiest route to go. All right. So what is the scariest moment? And this is from Varun Rags. What is the scariest moment during the infancy of Hermeus? The happiest, most rewarding as well.
Oh boy. Scariest and then
happiest? Scariest is definitely after our first advisory board meeting.
Oh, yeah. That's a good
so
one.
we were deep into the diligence process with one of the firms that were looking at us. And right after that advisory board meeting, AJ was like, I've been sitting on some news. They decided to say no. And I felt for the next...
We were pretty far along at that point.
Oh, because we were 5 months in of our 6 months of financial runway into the company. And it was just like... And then we have 1 month left and we have no options.
Yes. And the most terrifying, week or two later, but one door closes, another one opens. We get this, an email from Colsa and says, hey, come to San Francisco. And rest is history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was the worst. I guess maybe just the beginning, just jumping off the cliff. It was simultaneously terrifying because there's so much uncertainty and
it's all uncertainty.
It's all uncertainty. And it's just this hope and promise and naive optimism. Mm-hmm. And then well, now what?
Right. Well, AJ always says, to channel him in this conversation, he goes, well, jump off a cliff and build an airplane on the way down.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess there's also, a little bit later than that infant of infancy, there's a hardware failure when we doing some igniter things.
Oh yeah,
And-
I blew a hole in the side of the
Oh, that was
augmenter.
a bad one too.
fun. But then
yeah,
I
because like
fixed it
there's
in
not a
day.
ton of extra like budget to go do lots of other things. It's like
Yeah.
we gotta solve this one.
Actually, we named a conference room after it now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Patch.
Yeah.
All right, you want
patch.
to tell the story?
Oh yeah. So this story, make it quick. We were doing some igniter testing, and so anyways,
Igniter testing on a brand new
yeah.
3D printed augmenter, which was a huge percentage of our series,
I
our
think-
seed round budget.
I think that
Hardware budget,
that
yeah.
that whole piece of hardware was like 15K, 20K, which
Which
was
at the
actually,
time
at
was
the time was a massive
huge.
amount of
Yes.
money for us, and burned a hole in the first test, and everyone was freaking out. And I had seen things like this when I was at Blue and did some weird things with rocket engines, and it's like, don't freak out, guys. I got this. So I got some.
I remember that day very, very vividly.
So got out Dremel, started pulling away material that was burned up, and got some Inconel sheet metal, drilled some holes in it to kind of patch everything up to make it work as a screech liner had it intended. And I resistance welded that sucker back in, and it's still sitting
It's
there
in there.
today.
Yeah.
In there,
It helped great.
it lasted the entire campaign. It was awesome.
I remember getting out of my car at the test site, and you said, "Oh, got this issue." I was like, "Oh, Glenn's screwing with me." But no, yeah, we figured it out.
What's been yours?
The scariest?
Yeah.
I think not having a lot of like the technical background to
Mm.
understand like what we're doing, how important some of our milestones are from the engineering perspective.
Mm.
I think that like early on led to like a lot of just like, is this going to work?
Mm.
A lot of like, just being like a little unsure about what we're doing and the path that we're taking. But obviously the longer I was here, the more I talked to engineers, I think that went away. But also I think the scariest thing that is kind of day to day for me is like, how do we still bring the right people in to build the right products and to,
Because it's all an external dependency. Like it's not in your hands.
well, and
It's
hiring
like,
also isn't easy.
Right.
So,
right.
and we're also hiring, everyone to do something that they've never done before.
Mm.
And so it's just like, we could talk about that for forever, but I think we have a whole podcast about that. But that is what's scariest to me. But also the most fun and the most exciting is getting to work with everybody here and it's like creating a really awesome team. So like that to me has been like the most fun, exciting piece of it. But curious, like what you're all.
Well, heck,
also
and
the first time,
Natalie's been turning wrenches here too.
a little bit,
Yeah.
a little bit. I would say the most exciting thing to me actually is the first engine test that I saw. I think I was here, I don't know, less than 4 months, and we ran that engine, and you all gave me the big headphones to wear. We had to stand far away, so I'm like so excited. And I remember it was like really loud. My chest was shaking, and it was like, I guess coming down a little bit. So I took my headphones off, and I forget who it was, but someone looked at me. They were like, "That's not it. That was it, just like ramping up." And so like when it actually fired, I was like, oh my God. That was probably like one of the coolest when I got to see it fire for the first time.
I think, to your point about the like fixing things, like those scrappy like late night moments. So it was like when we were doing the unveil of the mock-up of Quarter Horse.
Yeah.
When the engine wasn't working, like the T5 control amp was just like day after day after day. It was just broken. We had like a bunch of them. We were switching
That
them
damn
out.
thing
I
is the devil
hate that.
incarnate.
It's literally the worst possible thing. And it was just like hours and hours we were spending trying to debug it the right way. And then at one point, you and I just look at each other, it's like, what if we just don't?
Yeah,
And then we
what if
just like directly mechanically actuate this thing with an electromechanical actuator that we have. And then just
Send
just like those hacky moments.
Yeah.
Like those are really fun.
Yeah, I think counterpoint to the earlier funding, like minus, big plus was I think when Seed closed, we're like, oh, all right, we've got a shot to go do the thing. Like we're in it.
Oh yeah.
Like let's go execute.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was a good whiskey that we had that night.
Oh yeah.
All right. This one is from Griffin Cantrell. When I visited your DeKalb warehouse and PDK facility in March, I was blown away with all that you have accomplished and yet shocked that you chose Georgia to do it in. Why did you choose Georgia to pursue this dream, and what challenges has this in itself caused?
Hey, we wouldn't have this building in our Series A if it wasn't for Georgia, right? The cost of living here is way down. And another thing that people don't realize about Georgia is aerospace is like #1 export in the state of Georgia.
Yeah,
so
It's number one now.
Yeah, that's from the DeKalb folks. They're saying #1.
Oh damn.
So it's a big thing. Aerospace here. You have Lockheed, you have Delta, massive corporations here. There's a lot of aerospace jobs, a lot of manufacturing aerospace jobs that can satisfy it. And, you look at all these big aerospace companies. Where's Boeing building their new facilities? They're in the Southeast. It's not, they're not building brand new spanking things in Seattle or brand new buildings in LA because it's just too expensive to do so.
Yeah.
And so this is a great area for us to be able to essentially vertically integrate, have the engineers and manufacturing on the same playing field in the same city.
And it's a great transportation hub. UPS is here as well, like world's busiest airport back on top.
Yeah.
It's a good place to be. And also great university access. Obviously, we hire people from all over the country.
Right.
But some great universities right in the backyard.
What are the negatives of that?
Oh, negatives?
Oh,
I mean,
well,
there's not a lot of talent, right? It's like you feel the pain of this most, but it's like getting people out here is not trivial just because you're moving across the country. So I think we probably underestimated. There is a lot of appetite to get out of like the LAs and to get into a place where you can afford a house. But it's still a challenge to like have someone uproot their lives when a lot of the times, you could just go down the street to another company. But that said, it's like once someone comes here, they're fully bought in. And once you experience the lifestyle of like having both a major metropolitan city, but also having some space and like a yard if you wanted, or a farm in some instances, like
I think
you get everything you want.
Part of it too is, you have somebody moving here and they have predispositions on what Georgia is, right? I born and raised here, right? And I've seen the both ends of the spectrum there, but it's a very much purple state, right? You can find any political spectrum that you want here. You can find mountains, you can find oceans, you can find the Gulf, rivers, lakes, everything you have. It's a very diverse, locale.
On a lot of metrics.
On a lot of metrics.
Yeah, it is.
It's also nice you can fly direct almost anywhere. I can take a direct flight to White Plains, where my parents live.
Or also to where a lot of our customers are, like in DC, right?
Yeah,
or
up and down
in
from DC,
Dayton,
DC,
or wherever.
Yeah. My direct to Dayton.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Next one is from J Thomas 1500. How important is fast design iteration to overall project success?
Oh,
Do you guys spend more time getting it right the first time, or design, build, test, learn as quickly as possible?
You want to go first and then I'll hit the chart?
Okay, yeah. Well, obviously it's like absolutely critical. It's like on our website, right? So, but I do think there's a balance. You don't want to be reckless with it, right? You have to get in the neighborhood, so you have to do the right sort of work up front to understand it. But you also have to realize how much work you can do. So it's like knowing when to stop the analysis. We talked a little bit about it in our like Flight Sciences podcast, but it's like you do have to do the right amount of work up front. But then once you realize that you're into uncertainties that you can't buy down without test, then you stop and then you go test, right? And I think a lot of times you can get caught in this like, oh, let me just reduce the uncertainty. Let's needle. But at some point, it's like until you have a working system, a physical thing in reality that you can point to and measure data on, you're not reducing those uncertainties. You're just spinning your wheels. And so it's like, and then the real learning happens of putting it all together. And like, something we've always said is like the problems happen at interfaces.
Like where subsystems come together.
Like most of the time, like the people we're hiring are good at analysis, right? It's like that's what they train you in school. That's what most people have a lot of experience with. They're getting the answers right. But then the problem is like, oh, we miscommunicated at an interface, or like we didn't account for this thing that we only noticed when we're actually putting it together. So it's like getting to that point as fast as possible. Absolutely critical.
So from a financial standpoint too, in terms of, okay, well, we're going to go make aircraft, right? How much are those aircraft going to cost? Now, this is an incredible study that I read. It was a lot of military aircraft, everything from bombers to fighters to everything. And they plotted that up on, program time versus flyaway cost. And so if you look at that, it's incredibly linear of how the longer the program takes, and it doesn't matter if it's a big bomber,
big thing,
or a small fighter, the longer the program costs, the higher the flyaway cost is, period. So it's incumbent on us to reduce the iteration, have a lot of iterations, compress that, timeline of that development time, and get the flight quickly.
Yeah.
And just to foot stomp a little bit on not being reckless, like we're definitely in our ethos, so like willing to take smart risks, but smart risks is super key. Like you don't want to screw things up for bad reasons and not learning things because you just didn't do the work. Like that's obviously unacceptable.
Yeah. This one is from a past intern, Ben Erdo. Hi, Ben.
What's up, Ben?
What up, Ben?
Yeah.
Will the J85 continue to be the turbojet of choice, or will Hermes plan to source other engines?
For Quarter Horse, it will continue to be. Quarter Horse is designed to be a demonstrator. It's not really a capability, if you would. It's for flight testing, hypersonic technologies. It's not something that we're going to continue into production for a long time. We're really focused on Dark Horse and what we're going to be doing in terms of a production and capability for the next aircraft. So yeah, the J85 is here to stay for Quarter Horse. There will be something else for Dark Horse.
Okay.
That's where we'll stop there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
All right. This is a two-part question from Tatted Hunter. So the first section is, how do you choose team members, experience or ambition?
Oh.
Well, yes. It's like both. I want actually you start on this one.
Okay. Yeah, both plus other things.
Mhm.
Experience, we need a lot of experience, but again, we're not hiring anyone that has built a Mach 5 hypersonic vehicle before.
Well, just a different flavor.
A different flavor.
Hypersonic aircraft.
Sure.
Like Bigelow has flown a dozen different hypersonic vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So aircraft, yes.
Yeah.
But then, we also hire a lot of new grads that don't have a ton of years of experience behind them. But what they do have is a lot of grit, a lot of ambition, a lot of desire to learn and learn quickly. So it's like, if you don't have, something that you always say is like, if you don't have experience, like really grit and effort is really all the things that you do have. So you better go get after it.
I'll usually take that over like specific domain experience all
Agreed.
the time, especially if you're like quick to learn and like have a lot of mental
I will
horsepower.
always hire a wide T versus a very tall T all day long.
T being like your experience
Depth
level
and depth in an area.
Something else I've kind of like crafted my thoughts around. It's like, it's not so much about experience, because experience tends in people's minds to be like years, but it's really about exposure. So it's like someone who has been hands-on on like a Formula SAE or like a DBF team, design, build, fly. They have a lot more exposure than someone who has only done research, right? For the type of thing that we're doing. So you can get a lot more, especially if you go to a startup, you can get a lot more exposure in relatively few years. And so it's like hiring for exposure more than, direct years of experience.
And oftentimes
we had that. Oh, go ahead.
You've got exposure to working like multidisciplinary problems as part of a
Complexity
team.
exposure is a huge one.
Yeah, we had that conversation just a few hours ago of like, what about career development here at Hermes as well? Well, you could go to a big prime and then they'll have a specific program of how the things you need to learn and everything to
like some boxes
to get
to
to
check.
the boxes to check to get the next thing. And maybe you'll have a professional mentor. Well, here you just get way too much accountability than you have any right to have.
Just throw right in the
thrown into the fire. And if you like that, we're the place to work.
You better like it, because if you don't,
There's no other option.
it's tough. I mean, you wouldn't want to work here if you don't want that.
Right.
But yeah, folks that want a lot of experience, a lot of exposure earlier in their careers, startups are generally a good place to get that exposure. The second half of this question is, how do you plan to continue building a culture that strives for success?
There's a million things. I mean,
that's a loaded question.
I mean, scaling culture is hard too.
I think it's one of those things where there's no magic bullet, right? And it is highly path dependent and highly dependent on where you are at the time. So it's like, what works for us today is not going to work for us at 300 people. So there's a million things, and so it starts even at the website when people are first learning about the company, right? It's like setting expectations and being transparent about who we are and like how we approach problems is something we spend a lot of time thinking about. And then it's every step of the way. So from when they first learn about us, what is the expectation they have for the company, starts to craft when they work at the company, how they're going to be. So it starts there. And then even through the onboarding process, it's like even somewhat of training people in the onboarding process about how we operate and reflecting our cultural values. So it's really just making sure everything that we do represents the culture and reminding ourselves every single day about it. And it's really hard because it's like every new person changes the culture somewhat, right?
Yeah, and to try to
partially why we bring people in.
Which is a good thing sometimes, right?
I mean, and you try to continue to reinforce that culture. You really have to say things like 7 times and like half the people remember hearing it once.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just, you need to continue to repeat it, and then lead by example, right? I mean, you can't be a manager here and then just, hey, do that. That's not how it works here. You need to be in there and actually not only have the receipts before, but build the receipts at the company.
Build trust. Yeah.
Yep. All right. This one is from Kelly Girardi. So how do the themes of American dynamism play into your roadmap and the problems you choose to build solutions for?
Yes is the short answer. So
Actually, do you want to like just give a brief overview of like at least how we interpret American dynamism for the people who haven't heard of that before?
yeah, so it's I guess a relatively new term that covers a bunch of different industries: aerospace, defense, healthcare, or health tech, and a lot of different things. I personally kind of internalize that as like building in America, like building a greater America.
I think there is even an aspect of like building tangible physical things a lot of the times, which is like, reinvesting in America's infrastructure.
Manufacturing, like supply chain,
right,
are all part of it. So those are definitely themes that we hit on. Obviously, aerospace, yes. There's definitely a defense aspect to building fast airplanes and capabilities that follow. Manufacturing, yes. I guess we're not specifically like attacking the supply chain problem, but we interact with it all the time, and I guess there are things that we're doing there. Manufacturing, absolutely.
Yeah, I think I also think there's like a new phase where the things that have captured interest in the startup world for a long time has been software, right? And so it's like this resurgence of hardware and like tangible outcomes, I think is super exciting. Like it's so fun to be a part of something that you can see and touch and feel and like smell
and hear and smell all your senses.
Yeah. So it's like there's something really, really fun about that I think is, almost like a resurgence of the early 1900s of like the manufacturing entrepreneurship that is really exciting.
For a long time I thought I was born about, I don't know, 30 to 50 years too late, right? I wanted to be either born in the 60s or the turn of the century with trains and everything. But as I've gotten older and had this experience, I'm like, I am born exactly when I need to be.
Yeah.
I do love trains.
Yeah. Could have been a real engineer.
You seem like a guy who would have like a train set in his basement.
It's around the Christmas tree right now.
I love it. All right. So this is from a friend of ours, Peyton Barnwell. So y'all have
my girlfriend.
Yeah.
Y'all have sick marketing. So shout out to Marty and Michael who are behind the scenes of the cameras right now. How do you integrate storytelling and branding into your tech roadmap?
I mean, we could probably all talk about this to some extent. So the highest level thing is like, it's pretty easy when you're making real stuff because that's just cool, right? But then I think it's like, how do you take it one step beyond? Like Marty and I were just talking about this today, where it's like having cool stuff and showing off cool stuff is like bare minimum now because we have it. But then the next step is like to really craft the why and really focus on
how
the
everything
mission,
connects.
right? Well, it's like, it's starting with the mission. And then it's like, not only, so it's something we've always talked about is like aligning the tech and business roadmap together is how you make this happen without a billionaire founder. So it's like making sure the story reflects that mission and that like long time horizon incremental step is like how we try and align it. And then it just comes down to like, what is the most authentic and well polished, but not necessarily, but certainly authentic version of ourselves that can tell that story and like help people understand that it's not just like, oh, we're going to go build a passenger aircraft like idiots.
And there are a lot of non-intuitive aspects of what we're doing,
right?
For sure. I think if you were to say the baseline technology is there to go build a Mach 5 aircraft, like until you kind of dig in, like it sounds kind of crazy, but then you dig in and yeah, I mean, that's kind of the state of play.
It's a very difficult story we have to tell, right? There's a lot of moving parts in the business plan. We're not just making a modern day X, right? We're doing something.
We're not the Uber of
exactly.
Well, and we have to make it digestible for a very wide audience. Everything from
every audience
experienced engineer to mom and dad.
Right. It's the front porch. Marketing is the front porch of the company.
Yeah, I think being able to tell a nuanced story is always going to be important because it's not just a soundbite. Like soundbites don't really work for us, which is why we started the podcast. It's like we can have longer form conversations about things. There's different avenues, and sometimes we can drive things to a soundbite, but it is hard. And I do think there is an appetite and appreciation for a curated, nuanced conversation, but not just like a quick soundbite that says like we're.
Yeah. Yep. Agree. All right. Last question from the submitted ones from Michael Swaffles. Favorite plane that's not the SR-71 or XB-70 and why?
Can I say the A-12? Instead of
You can say whatever you want.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's kind of cheating, but
Yeah.
it's still pretty good.
I guess our 71, the family model. It's got
Yeah.
the big chines. Yeah. I like the A12 better personally.
Favorite plane?
I would.
X-15 doesn't count then, I guess. It's rocket based.
I mean, it's a rocket based, right? The F-103, it never came to existence,
The
but it's,
XF-103.
yeah, exactly. It was going to be a Ramjet.
Similar engine config, yeah.
Exactly. So it's kind of what we were building, except a little slower, dealing with the technologies of the day, but just never made it off the ground. You know, it was that part of the history where going Mach 3 wasn't quite fast enough anymore.
I'm starting to get into the X-47. That's the autonomous one. That like autonomous.
The Navy plane.
Yeah, Navy plane. Just because I mean, I like the little anecdote that was like, it was so precise on landing on aircraft carriers that it was starting to damage the deck because it was hitting in the same place again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a testament to it's like where we're at with autonomy. And it's like, I think it's still a ways out for passenger aircraft just because one, regulations have to change. And like, I think there's still some more like work to be done on the analysis and like the, safety aspect to make sure it does meet the same like safety standards. There's probably some more work to do there, but like in terms of the performance, it's like, we're pretty much there.
Computers are pretty good.
It turns out,
doing airplane
turns out, and that's pretty exciting to start rolling some of those tech.
Got to add in some
technologies in.
randomness to where it actually aims.
That's great.
It's beautiful.
All right, we're going to get to some of the live questions.
Go.
Okay. What will be
yeah.
the initial passenger capacity?
Well, zero.
For
For
Zero on quarter horse.
For quarter horse, 0. Dark horse, 0. Well,
Right.
maybe
Well,
we'll see.
0 for now.
0 for now. And Halcyon, it's still TBD, but it's not going to be a very big aircraft, right? When you start to go really fast with hypersonic jets, it blows up really quick in terms of size. So, and then but the good thing is that we can service the same number of passengers because we're moving 5 times as fast as commercial jet.
So a Mach
right?
5 20 passenger jet acts like
100.
100 passenger,
Exactly.
like
Business
Mach
class
0.8,
cabin.
0.9.
Exactly. So it'll probably be in the neighborhood of 20 or so. And that was one of the reasons why, Concorde had a poor product market fit is after the regulations of no flight over land hit, they were immediately too big of an aircraft.
And too expensive to operate.
Exactly.
They figured it out.
The market's just very different. They
Right.
eventually figured out how to price it and be profitable on certain routes.
All right, next question from Stickerless asks, what do you think will be the most interesting or important data that we get from Quarter Horse?
We're starting to get some great data actually. So we just completed our test campaign up at Notre Dame Turbo Machinery Laboratory. I won't go into all the details because I could bore everyone to death or excite everyone beyond belief. But we learned a lot of things there on how we're going to have to use that engine and things we're going to have to modify on that engine to improve performance here, there, or the other. But the things that we've gained from that testing has just been amazing.
And to that point, it's things that we couldn't have just done through analysis.
Yes, 100% could
Things
not
you
have done
didn't
it through
know you
analysis.
needed to analyze.
Yes.
Right.
And that goes back into all the modeling that we do, which supports continued development.
And going back to that question, it was just like, okay, well, we had started to do analysis. We've done further analysis on it while we were building block 0 of quarter horse. But at some point you got to pencils down, go build something, and then keep doing the analysis. But let's go build hardware. Let's go test it, and you'll learn and iterate.
Yeah, I think there's like performance is the obvious one, which is just like being able to put sensors into the environment. I think it's something like we've spent 15 minutes in like hypersonic flight conditions over the course of history in testing as an aircraft,
in America,
or even as a rocket, which is like atrociously too few, too little time. But then even just like, how do we manufacture these things? Like getting some at-bats at that is super interesting. Just like, yes, we have a company that has manufactured a lot of things, new developments, as well as like certified airworthy products. But it's like, how do we do it as a company together? And starting to get at-bats at that is absolutely critical.
Agreed.
St. Michael asks, what advice would you give to an engineering student about to graduate? Do y'all care if I take this one?
Oh, get it.
Go for it.
Get it.
Interview. Most people, whether you are a new grad or someone with 20 years of industry experience, are bad at interviewing. So get reps in and just interview all over the place and practice talking about yourself to other people.
Mhm.
I think people
and
feel
things
like
you've done, like things you've done as a team, like
yeah, and like identifying what have you done versus what your team has done and being able to differentiate between the two.
Mhm.
But also talking about yourself in a hyped up way that isn't
Bragging.
I'm so good at everything. I've
Right,
never made
right.
mistakes. And that it takes practice. So just
Also-
like get reps in.
Don't show up in like a shorts and t-shirt and a backwards cap.
Oh, that has actually happened. That's
That-
crazy.
Yeah.
also suit and tuxedo not required.
And yeah, you don't need to
be
just
kinda funny.
just a little bit elevated
Probably
for
not.
the position you're I mean, because if
Yeah.
you're not gonna try for the interview, how are we gonna expect that you're gonna try when you work here?
Yeah. Shout
Yeah.
out to Zach for always wearing his backwards.
I mean, we have backward hat folks here all the time.
Yeah.
But when we first met Zach, he did not have a backwards hat
Oh,
on.
100%.
Yeah, there's a difference between first impressions. Right?
Yes.
You
Yeah,
Make a
yeah,
good
yeah.
first impression.
Yeah.
Care.
Care.
Yeah. All right. Last live question, I believe, unless more come through, is Mr. Chico 929. Would the transition from turbojet to ramjet be noticeable to the crew and passengers?
Well, as it stands right now, yes, it
Okay.
would very much. So quarter horse is a different animal. Let me preface that in that it's an autonomous, or remotely piloted vehicle that has 0 passengers on it, right?
Mhm.
So we can do things a little bit different. We can have jerks and accelerations and things like that. That the hardware just doesn't care, right?
Mhm.
Now, if we were to do it the way quarter horse is doing it, it would certainly you would feel, max AB. It would throttle down. You'd feel a little, like the aircraft's slowing down, or at least a little bit, and then we would turn off the AB completely, turn off the turbojet completely, and then you're basically slowing down a lot, right? Your negative acceleration, and then when we light the ramjet again, it's a gradual buildup, but you'll feel it push back in the seat. It'll actually be kind of fun if you ask me, but not everybody's going to like it. So there's some iteration that we're going to have to do with the next few incarnations of the next bigger engine.
And there'll be knobs to
Yeah,
make it
and
smoother.
we know how to get really. It's all about how slow you can do it,
Mhm.
of how to make it soft and gentle. For an
Actually, in theory,
autonomous,
if you've got enough engines, you could kind of phase it.
you could
Kind of like
could.
starting up a
Yeah.
multi-engine rocket. Yeah.
But for the autonomous vehicle, it doesn't care.
Yeah, I think that's a big important point to like hit on is like, how can a startup move fast enough? Like, how do you move fast as a startup? And it's like, what do you not do? That's the more important question to always
Yeah,
be
what
asking.
can you like
What
cut
can you
out
just don't do? Just
Right.
how do you maintain
or be
focus?
smart to not have to do?
Exactly. So it's like for quarter horse, we don't care about smooth transition. We just don't care about it because it doesn't, as long as the duration is within performance bounds, it doesn't matter at all. So let's not even worry about it. And that's, so if anyone saw the engine test where it's like fully shut down and then turned back on, obviously that would not be a smooth transition for a passenger, but we don't care.
But we could make it a show if it was. So I mean, it's like, okay, everybody,
Here we
count
go.
down. Here we go.
I mean, that'd be kind of fun. That'd be
We,
kind of
we
cool.
can do better. But
We can do better. But it
Yeah,
also,
we'll do better.
we can choose to do it.
Yeah,
We're straight.
and we could pull the passengers.
raise your hand.
Who
wants to-
wants to have a fun transition versus a smooth one?
We got the smooth one and the fun one.
Oh God. All right. Last live question from Iceman7. When is the
Fair.
first flight for quarter horse? When are we flying?
What
So
is
we're
it right
trying
now?
we're going to roll out the vehicle end of next year.
Mhm.
So that means we're under its own power, get it out there. And so flight testing the following year.
Yeah, bulk of 24 will be flight
Yeah.
testing.
Exactly.
Yeah, late 23, early 24.
Awesome. I have a question I'm going to throw in
Uh-oh.
just because I love asking this. What's the hardest thing each of you are working on right now?
Oh God.
Oh, everything.
You want to start?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about use cases for fast airplanes, a lot of those early use cases shy of carrying people reside within government missions. And the government is a challenging customer for sure. So, I spend a lot of time, figuring out how do we build a requirement for doing things that matter and are valuable and game-changing.
A capital R.
Capital R,
For folks in
Yeah.
DoD tech, they understand the capital R.
that's a big one. And then, all the other moving pieces involved in having government as a customer.
Yeah, I'm going to coattail off that a little bit because you would think it'd be quarter horse because we're knee deep in designing that, but I have a great general and support staff there that are working that program. So I'm really the most difficult thing for me right now is supporting this guy and standing up the Dark Horse program and really getting that vehicle, laying flat so that we can
We haven't really talked a ton about Dark Horse. I guess more to follow on that front.
Yeah, I have a weird amalgam of roles, but they all focus around like operations, like business operations, like how like process related things. So almost all of my questions are complexity management. All the difficulties are complexity management of things where it's not obvious what and when. I think that's the biggest question I'm constantly asking myself and my team is like, when are we adding this process? Because it's like by some point, we need to be AS 91, 100 certified, like for aerospace manufacturing. When is the right time to start biting off a lot of that? So some of it's low hanging fruit that we're doing actively right now, but to get to that like certified level, there is a time, and if you do it too early, it's bad. If you do it too late, it's bad. So it's all just these really complex when
a lot of these
questions.
Like company building questions, a lot of times are really when questions and like time syncing various things.
Well,
with each other. And same on this.
Yeah, to borrow a phrase from a good advisor and friend, it's we're not just building, fast airplanes, right? We're building a company that's building fast airplanes. So
got to build the machine that builds the machine as well.
That was from Rob Myerson.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Except it was rockets, not airplanes, but same principle.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
What about you?
Oh, probably creating the infrastructure to support building the machine that builds the machine.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mike just said, it's just like, I think if folks have never known anyone personally that have worked in like HR people ops, like seek those people out and give them a hug, because of the amount of work that goes into like really simple things like payroll. Like payroll, like to a lot of people seems really simple, but making sure that
I like getting paid.
Yeah, everyone likes getting paid. People like getting promoted. People like getting paid fairly within the industry and across the company. But there's a lot that goes into that. Especially, beginning of this year, we had 38 full-time employees January 1. Now we're sitting at 86-ish, 87, something like that. So it's like, the rapid growth has been a lot, and we're also going to continue to grow. So that's probably the hardest thing, is just keeping up with.
And that goes back to scaling culture too. Like if you double the size of the company each year, which we'll need to do for some time, necessarily half of the people at the company have been there less than a year.
Yep.
That's hard.
And what works for 30 does not work for 100, does not work for 300, does not work for 1,000. So it's like being as preemptive as possible without being too preemptive and like spinning, like not fighting the closest shark.
Well, not putting stuff in concrete either. It's like we have to be flexible with our process.
Change is
flexible
the
with
only constant.
Exactly. And it's like, again, what you said, like what we're rolling out now for HR people ops, it may be a completely different program, completely different initiative once we have 500,000 employees. And so, the getting spun up and then immediately starting working on future planning again. That's the hardest part. But
same with facilities too.
Man.
That's Jesus. Facilities.
Yep. All right, guys.
On that one. Next time.
Next time.
Next time on Live AMA.
Yeah, this was so fun. Thanks for everyone for joining. We really appreciate it. Hopefully this was enlightening and answers a lot of the questions that we got sent in. So see y'all next time.
Later.
We got to go back to work.
Yeah.